I want to start by saying that just sitting here and listening to you all introduce yourselves was the whole event for me. You all have covered leadership from every aspect. I am humbled to be before you. I am honored to be before you. This is a tremendous idea. We need to share more. I have been in Savannah for over 50 years now, and I've done just about everything that you can think of in terms of leadership um, from a nonprofit perspective, from the perspective of a business leader, and with a desire to make a difference. And when I listen to some of the things that you all emphasize as what you want to change in your backgrounds, I was just overwhelmed. I have no idea why I'm here uh, after hearing that. But if there's anything that I can do to move you forward on your personal agendas as to what you want to see change, that's what I would like to do. So I'm going to go through a few slides and just tell you a little bit more about myself and how I came to be called a leader. Now, this family, this is my mother over here. That's my father. And of course, I'm sure everybody in here could tell that's me right there. But I was next to the youngest of the children, and I got a chance to see my oldest brother and my other brothers and my sisters and all do things. My oldest brother would have been the first African American to receive a PhD from University of Southern Mississippi. That was called Mississippi Southern when I was young, but he was valedictorian of high school class. Everybody in the town, all of the white community leaders, the black community leaders knew about my brother because he had what was called perfect pitch. I don't know if any musicians in here, but that's a kind of a rarity. But he had when he left Jackson State and finished Jackson State in 3 years. Went to University of Wisconsin, did a master's degree, and during those years we couldn't go to Mississippi Southern or Ole Miss, and so the state of Mississippi actually paid black people to go to school for graduate work outside of the state of Mississippi. So most of my high school teachers were probably far better educated than the teachers at the white school at Hattiesburg, because my teachers had masters and PhD degrees from Purdue and Indiana University and all the schools in North Carolina so we had a tremendous high school. But that middle picture is me at a school called Third Ward. In Hattiesburg, they didn't need to name our schools. They gave us the school that was in the ward where we lived, and they called it Third Ward. Eventually, they gave us a name, and it became Grace Love Elementary School. And that other picture is the house. That was the first house that my parents were able to afford. I was, most of my young life, we were in a housing project, very much like the housing project that's on the side of Carver State Bank. Very much like it, but it was called Jackie Robinson Place, and we can go to the next one. But my family eventually was able to buy that house on Ruby Avenue. Now the picture on here that I'm proudest of is that baseball team. I really just knew I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. I mean, there was no way I was not going to make the majors. I mean, everybody knew it. I was sure of it. I could play every position, could bat right-handed and left-handed. I was unbelievable in my mind. But I'm on that picture, and so is my younger brother. And there's no reason, Mahogany, you'll never be able to figure out which one I am, so you can stop. But I am over here. This is me right here. with the cap pulled down, and but and I was 11 years old when that picture was taken. My brother is on that picture. He's next to me, um, and so. But that was an interesting experience. The guy who was our coach was also the algebra teacher at the high school. You're talking about leadership training. This guy was pretty much the best math teacher in the city, but he took his extra time to teach us how to play baseball. And I can assure you that his impact on my life had far more to do with his talking to us as baseball players than it did in that algebra class. I did well in algebra, but I wasn't going to remember any of that. But I remember just about every leadership lesson from the Little League baseball team. This picture down at the bottom here, in that video, I think I said that almost throughout my life, I've always been president of something. I was decided to run for state student council president in the state of Mississippi. Now, what that means is that I ran for black state student council president. Magnolia State Association of Student Councils was a black association, and that was a Mississippi State Association. Well, I won. Sanford Bishop, if anybody remember that name, Sanford Bishop was a congressman out of Georgia, but he was the state student council president of the black students in the state of Alabama. So we met at a leadership meeting. This would have been, high school junior year or so. And so I'm on that picture, but that is, it's the Williamsburg Student Burgesses, where student council leaders from all over the country went to Williamsburg, Virginia, and had leadership conferences just like this, but larger. But we also went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, for the national meeting of student councils. And history does not properly record this, but Sanford Bishop and I and a lady from Virginia, which I can't remember her name right now, decided to represent our various states. Whereas we had a white student council president, you had a black student council president from the state of Mississippi and Alabama, and we actually won. So I ended up representing all the students from the state of Mississippi at the National Student Council leader. So I cast the ballot for the state of Mississippi, and so did Sanford Bishop cast the ballot for the state of Alabama. If you try to find that in your history books, you can't find it. I mean, eventually I'll have a conversation with Sanford, and we'll figure out how to document that better. But we represent our states at the National Student Council Association meeting, and this would have been when I was 11th grade. That's a long time ago. This is me and my sister's car. My sister used to let me drive her car. My sister was a school teacher. She went to Alcorn and finished there and came back to Hattiesburg to teach. And of course, that's a Sunday school book. I went to church all the time. If I wasn't playing baseball, I was at church. If I weren't at church, I was doing some special thing with the school or something. But this picture up here is a picture of me being with that crown on. I was selected president of the YPD of the 8th Episcopal District of the AME Church, which included Mississippi and Louisiana. And so I was awarded a 4-year scholarship to Morris Brown College from that position. I want to skip through these quite quickly. This is, of course, if we got fraternity people in here, this is me, and I'm here. But I was bossless of Alpha Sigma chapter of Omega Psi Phi fraternity at Morris Brown College. So I was also a leader in the fraternity. And Edna Jackson said that, or David Patterson said I married up, so that's a wedding picture. But this is a unique situation here. I was one of the few students to finish undergrad school and be admitted directly into the Harvard Business School. Harvard Business School does not admit people right out of undergrad school. They make you work somewhere first, and they changed that out of because of their initiative to integrate their school. Prior to my class, the largest class of African Americans at the business school was 6, I believe. There was never more than 6 admitted, and that was a class right before my class. And there were 26 of us African Americans who were admitted during my year. That's a picture of my section. That's section D. That's me there. But there are three African Americans on that picture, and I think 3 women. 2 women. That's section D. And there were only 2 females in the class, and there were only 3 African Americans in section D. And but that was a tremendous educational opportunity for me. I truly enjoyed it. I enjoyed every level of college. If I could go back to anything, that's where I would go, somewhere in college. I was in everything at Morris Brown. I think this is a picture of, I think that's the honors colloquium or something. But I joined every organization. You look at this 1967 yearbook at Morris Brown. I'm on every picture with every organization. And then of course, as Edna said, I was tracking over to Spelman, and that's where I should have a degree from Spelman College also. But that's where Shirley was. So, well, now we get to why you all invited me here. I came to Savannah to be president of Carver State Bank. And when I was in between my first and second year of graduate school at Harvard Business School, they usually ask you, they force you to go get a job. That you can't rush through your MBA program at Harvard Business School. You have to go 2 years. And during that summer, they said, go work somewhere. And of course, it's exciting to get an opportunity. I was walking in the hallway of Baker Library on the Harvard Business School campus, and a banker, I saw the green CNS Bank. I mean, some of you all probably remember CNS Bank, but I saw the green CNS Bank signs, and I'd gone to school in Atlanta, so I recognized that sign. So I just walked up to the guys. They were recruiting second-year students, and I was a first-year student. And I ended up just having this great conversation with a guy by the name of Archie Davis and a guy by the name of Eugene Rackley. And I talked them into a summer job. And so I came to Savannah the summer of '69 to work for CNS Bank. And then when Mr. Lane, Millsby Lane, had this idea of organizing a community development corporation. That was his pet project during those years. And so he wanted me to go to Savannah to understand what he was doing in community development in Savannah. So I came to Savannah, and I was waiting on my meeting with Bill Van Landingham, who was the head of the Community Development Corporation. But I was sitting there talking to his secretary, and I used to carry on these conversations with anybody who would talk to me. And that was Betty Ellington. And some of you who have been around, that's Russell Ellington, the noted basketball star and coach of Beach High School. Well, it was his wife. And she asked me, she said, did you know that there's a black-owned bank in Savannah? I said, what? The whole concept of a black-owned bank. So she asked me if I would like to meet the people. And I said, sure. And I went over to meet the people at Carver State Bank, and it was in that building that's in the middle. And I met Mr. Perry, who was the president. At the end of the conversation, I said to Mr. Perry, I said, well, Mr. Perry, I'll be graduating from Harvard in another year. If you offer me a job, I'll take it. Life was simple then. I didn't have that one and the other ones. I could take a job for anything, and I would have taken it. But I never heard from him. But Harvard Business School is just a fabulous place, and so I used to spend a lot of time at Baker Library, and so I could keep up with this little bank in Savannah, Georgia, from Harvard. And so I understood what its size was. I would get its public reports and so forth. And so when I decided to take the job to come back to Atlanta to work for CNS Bank, and so I kept up with this bank, and lo and behold, I got the word that Mr. Perry, who was the president, was retiring, and they were going to start a search for a president. And that's how I ended up here. I decided I would get myself involved in that search process. And I ended up getting the interview, coming to Savannah for the interview, and became president of Carver State Bank. And this is the first building that I built. Now my son, who's taking over the bank now, is torn down my building. And but I was so proud of that. I built that building. We moved from there to there. This I was chairman of the National Bankers Association, which is a trade organization that represents the minority and female-owned banks in the country. And the guy who is on President Carter's right, Jim Purnell, was out of Seattle, Washington. He was chairman of the association at the time. And he called me, and Jim was the kind of banker that fit the prototype of what you might think of a bank. He drank martinis, and he left work early every day. But he was out in Seattle, Washington. He owned this little bank out there, and he called me and he said, Bob, you know that Georgia guy who's president of the country? I said, yeah, I know President Carter. I said, I worked with him as governor on projects and so forth. You ought to get us into the White House. We ought to go see the president. And I said, well, Jim, I was vice chairman. I said, well, Jim, I'll try. And I picked up the phone. I called a couple of Georgia politicians who were heavily involved in President Carter's campaign. And I said, well, you know, we ought to take the minority bankers to see the president. And within 2 weeks or so, we were in the White House. And we had a wonderful conversation. We were supposed to spend in there for 15 minutes, for 30 minutes. President Carter spent the first 15 minutes of the meeting talking to me about Savannah. What's going on down there? So the two of us ended up chatting, and so that picture was snapped while we were chatting, and this is me, and that's a Carver State Bank zip-up bag right there in front of the president. But that was, and then he ended up, President Carter enjoyed the conversation so much until his staff was just worried to death, because that conference lasted at least an hour and 20 minutes. And we were on his calendar for 30 minutes. It was supposed to be, we're going to come in, say hello, take a picture. He was going to have a press conference and announce a federal minority bank deposit program that we had helped him prepare. But that was one of the highlights of my early career. And then, of course, when I first moved to Savannah, these billboards, a guy by the name of Ben Tucker and I came to Savannah around the same time. And we decided that we needed to change things. And if you all know Ben Tucker, he was a lot hyper. He was he was pushing. And so we did some joint billboards, and I did this one. That's the Forgotten American Family series of ads that we ran. The next one. This is, I'm going to just skip through this. Well, let me mention one thing. I was asked a few weeks ago, what is my leadership style? And, I hadn't even thought about that. It was just a few weeks ago by a person that my son is trying to recruit to take a position in the bank. And I had not thought about that. And what came out of my mouth was relaxed. And relaxed is what I am now. I'm 75 years old, be 76 soon. And that's what I am now, relaxed. I don't think I was relaxed then. So I walk up to people now and I said, well, what do you think who work for me? I said, what do you think my leadership style? I get all kinds of responses. Somebody, Tanya Milton, who runs the Savannah Tribune, said I'm hands-on. And I'm clearly not hands-on at the bank. So it's kind of something that I have to think about But my guess is what has happened is that it's changed over years. And in the bank, I used to be hands-on. I used to used to be involved in everything, but now I'm involved in very little. This is the deal that we are very proud of. That Carver State Bank was the lead in refinancing the Hawks practice facility, which was about a $35 million transaction. And we pulled together a syndicate of about 10 or 12 black-owned banks, and we did that financing for the Atlanta Hawks, and that received national publicity. And of course, that's a picture of me and my son with Janet Yellen, who is the Secretary of Treasury now. She was Federal Reserve Bank president when we took that picture. The next, I want to talk to you about why it's important that we have sessions like this. I consider where I am now and what I've always been is more of a vision, a mission-based leader. There are only 19 black-owned banks in the entire country. Savannah has one, and I believe we're probably the strongest, or one of the stronger, and we're one of the smallest, but I think we're a very strong institution. There are only two black-owned banks headquartered in the state of Georgia. One is Citizen Trust Bank in Atlanta that was founded in 1919. We were founded in 1927, so it's a little older than what we are. The other slide bullet point mentions the fact that we are one of only 4 community development financial institutions in the whole state of Georgia. Banks in the state of Georgia, small banks, just kind of missed the ball 20 years ago when that program started. Racial attitudes in the state of Georgia within the community banks kept them from becoming part of a treasury program that would have saved almost all of the little small banks that failed during the 2007-2008 recession. If they had been community development financial institutions, they could have applied for treasury programs and so forth. They misread the program altogether 20-something years ago, whereas when I saw the program, I jumped at it. And so we are a Treasury certified community development financial institution. And those of you who are interested will find out more about that. We are one of only 2 really locally owned banks in the city of Savannah now. There are 2 banks in the city of Savannah that have board of directors who can decide things. That we don't have to appeal to anyone. I mean, if I decide I'm gonna make a loan, I can make the loan. I have lending authority for the capacity of the bank. Carver's lending. This is what I like to point out. In 2019 to 2020, nearly 99% of our lending went to either a minority borrower, a low to moderate income individual, low to moderate income communities serving organization, which means that a lot of the nonprofits and church groups and so forth, that's where our lending went. So you see what our mission indicates. The next one. This is, I wish I could claim credit for deciding that we would call this our vision and mission. But my son led a group of, took him a year to come up with those few words. But we decided that our vision statement should be financial freedom for all. And that kind of capsules what we've been doing all of our 95 years. And then we came up with this mission, and that's the short version, provide the building blocks to financial freedom. And those of you who are involved in banks know that the short version of most bank mission statements don't sound anything like that. There's either something in the short version that says something like enhancing shareholder wealth or shareholder value or something. It's something that is kind of a selfish and business oriented. Now, if you read our long version, you see something about making money and so forth, but that's the short version of our mission statement. That's what we lead with. When we are asked to talk about what are we doing at Carver State Bank, we say we are providing the building blocks to financial freedom. And we try to live up to that. We have all kind of home buyer seminar, pre-COVID, of course, home buyer seminars. We do all kind of education programs. All of our staff people are out doing financial literacy training when they're invited. The next one. Very early, and this is a leadership issue, I decided that we would have some business priorities. And I put staff development and community involvement as the number one and number two. Now, community involvement, if you know the history of this bank, you know that it included people like Eugene Gadsden and Curtis Cooper as board members and so forth, Coy Futch, one of her, grandfather. And so they were always involved in community. And so when I cannot claim just credit for getting the bank involved in the community. You know, if you look at where, I used to have a picture and after the Edna Jackson and some of the other people got arrested and for protesting around here, that they had to bail them out of jail. Well, where could they go on a Sunday and count the little money from the churches that they had raised to get them out of jail? And there's a picture of the civil rights leaders at Carver State Bank standing in the lobby counting the offerings from the church, which is one of my favorite pictures, and sometime I'm gonna have to find that picture. The next one. This is our current management officer team, and what we have tried to do, almost everyone on that picture, well, everyone on that picture has more than 20 years of banking experience. Some of them have worked for Carver all of their work life. For example, this is Alicia. Alicia graduated from Savannah State with a bachelor's degree. She came to Savannah State to run track. She's tall, so I immediately thought she was a basketball player. But she had a brother who came at the same time she had played basketball at Savannah State, but she came on a track scholarship. But when she finished, she's from Columbus, Georgia. She finished college. We gave her a job at Carver, and she has never left now. She's got children who are, you know, finished high school and so forth now. But so everybody on that picture has over 20 years of real banking experience. And we have made it a point to send them to training programs at the best banking schools in the country. This is, no, I'm finished with that. But the community involvement, if I were going to advise any of the younger people in here who really want to take a leadership role in Savannah, you got to get involved aggressively in some organizations that are doing things. Now, that's a short list of the things that I've done. Now, the two bigger things, the pictures, I was on the board of St. Joseph Candler Health System for 12 years, and I served on every committee, and I chaired the hospital board for the last year and a half or so of my term. My term ended in December, and so I saw Savannah from the perspective of a healthcare provider that is a nonprofit but has to earn a profit in order to stay alive. Its fund balance has to increase. And so I know what Savannah looks healthcare-wise. That other picture is a picture of a current board of Savannah Economic Development Authority. And interesting, you know, I'm on that board, and I've been on that board for 16 years now. I didn't want to be on that board. Edna Jackson called me. I was having a nice lunch at the buffet at DeSoto Hilton. And I get this call from Edna. She says, Bob, we're going to put you on the board of CEDA. And this is when Otis was the mayor, and Edna was his, you know, do things, do things woman. Pro tem was the position. But so Edna called me. I said, Edna, I'm not coming on any more nonprofit boards. I've done it enough. And so I said no, and went back to my lunch. And the next day I get this call, you've been elected to the board of Savannah Economic Development. But all of these other organizations, the Chamber of Commerce is not up there, but I have, at one time or another, I've had some kind of leadership position in every one of those organizations. And there's a tremendous contrast. No, I'm through with that. There's a tremendous contrast between the mission of Step Up Savannah and some of the other organizations, and I enjoyed Step Up Savannah immensely. Well, what do we think a leader is? And I want to get somebody else's view on that. So somebody just tell me what you think a leader ought to be. I mean, anyone. This is at the Harvard Business School, everything is case study. So everything is discussion. And they tell you that there's no right and wrong answers, but clearly there's a right and wrong answer. They tell you there's no right and wrong answer. The professor grades you based upon your class participation. Yes. Servant. Oh my God. Do all of you leaders think that you are servant leaders? I know the minister does. Yeah, because they both are two ministers, right? Yes. Because that's what they teach us. You know, that's what my mother thought. See, my mother was, and that video said 12 years. I believe she was president at PTA for almost 18 years. You know, all the while one of us was in school, she was the president. And every time she tried to resign, the principal of the school would come to the house and talk her out of it. You know, oh no, Miss James, you got to stay. We've got a lot going on this year. And I knew all of that because the beauty shop, my mother was a beautician, the beauty shop was the front room of the house. And you could sit in the other room, which was the living room, and you could hear the conversation in the beauty shop. And so I just loved, I'd come home from school, I would sit on that sofa, and I would listen to the conversation in the beauty shop. You could learn more from listening to conversation about women getting their hair. I knew everything, and several of the school teachers who were my teachers used to get their hair done at my house. The principal's wife was down there, and so I knew everything. I knew about all the girls who had who had problems, and so, but you could hear it right there in the beauty shop. Yeah. So a servant. Oh, I don't think do we need to go further than that? I think we'll leave it that. I think first you ought to try to be a servant. You know, you ought to get involved with some organization. You ought to follow some people. You ought to, you can't be a leader if you don't have any followers. And the first thing you ought to do is get involved helping somebody else. Well, how do you become one? And how you become a leader? Yes. Yeah, you can't. Yeah. Yeah, you sure can't be a leader if you don't have anybody following you. Now, you can get to be a leader if you're very wealthy. I owned we used to play football outside. My mother used to stand in the door at the beauty shop and watch us play. The kids play football outside on the dirt street, and she was totally disappointed that I didn't want to play football. I would have been a wide out by that time. I'm different now. I weighed about 165 or something like that, and I was close to 6 feet 2 inches tall. And she just knew that I was going to play football. And my brother ahead of me played football and was a star on the championship team and all that. But you can't be a leader if you don't have people who are going to follow you. And I became a leader in the the Sandlot football game outside of my house because I was good at it. You know, you can be a leader by just being competent. And you can be a leader by working harder than anyone else. I think in college, I don't think I was by far the smartest kid in the class, but I worked at it. I had come up with just, you stay until you finish your homework. You never go to class late. You always turn in your assignment on time. And that was just kind of drilled in me, by my mother. And, I could not tell the teacher a lie because the teacher was going to come down to the house and tell my mother what lie I told, and my mother was going to know that was a lie. And so it was community was different. But then there's the other issue that kind of gets into what Edna was talking about is that integrity point. People got to trust you. Oh, God, why do you want to be a leader? I think I want to ask somebody at this table. Yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I can answer it. I don't think people necessarily want to be a leader. Well, I know I didn't want to be a leader, but I believe that people inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
And when they inspired me, that gave me that inspired me to inspire somebody else. I got all these nuggets from all these great people, and I wanted to give back.
Yes.
So when you want to start giving back, or you want to start doing something greater, then that's how you become a leader. Because just like Muhammad said, you become a servant to whatever it was that somebody inspired you to do.
Yes.
So when you are a leader, you inspire a vision, you inspire people, you share a vision, and then you have responsibility to empower others with that. And that's what makes a great leader. Because I don't think I woke up and said, I think I'm going to be a leader. But that's the cultivating all those things.
That's a fantastic response to that. You want to do something. You want to make things better. Somebody did something good, and you want to do something. You want to pass it on. I don't think you should want to be a leader unless you're inspired to do something good, to make things better. Boy, when you went around the room and people said, "What would you want to change?" I said, "Well, God, that's the whole discussion." Because everyone said they would like to change something. And that's what you do when you become a leader. When I became the leader at Carver State Bank, number one, once I fully understood how unique the institution was, very few in the country. There were probably about 40-something when I took over, 40 to 50 of them, black-owned banks in the whole country. And when I figured out how unique that is to have a black-owned bank in a city the size of Savannah, I said, well, God, number one, I don't want it to fail in my watch. I wanted to be able to stand here and 50 years later and say, yeah, Carver State Bank is stronger today than it's ever been. And we are growing leaps and bounds. I just told the people at our table, we got excited. I got excited on my 50th anniversary day, December 1st. I bid it on a bank to buy a bank in the state of Alabama, and was successful. So we actually own control of another bank in the city of Birmingham, Alabama. Can you believe that? From Savannah, Georgia. Now, and I can share with you, there's nothing but problems. but fortunately, we have the money, and my son is going to be the interim president soon, and so hopefully we'll hire a president and get the thing turned around, and it will be a major participant in that community. The next one, I think we've covered that. I didn't want to linger on that leadership style question because at this stage of life, you need to think that through. But I think that kind of evolves. I went from being autocratic. I was just dictated everything. Whatever. When I was young, I had plenty of energy, and if you didn't do it right, it was you didn't work there. And then I became more of a kind of a democratic kind of person who we would sit down and chat about issues and solve problems together, and and we would march off saying we worked on this together. Then I became one of those that didn't want to, whatever you decide is probably okay with me. you know, so I don't think you should linger on that too much. But it would be nice to think about how you function or interact with people. And my advice to you as leaders, and it's to do something you really like. If you really feel compelled to do something about the need to work on the mental illness issues in our state, work on it. You'll wake up the next day feeling a lot better. If you want to see, Roger, if you want to see a better education system, do what you're doing. Jump right in the mix. You don't have to win or lose. You want to be in there working on the problem. So if you feel passionate about it, jump right in and do something. Now, what I'm going to do with my next 50 years, I'm going to watch y'all succeed. I don't really plan to do a whole lot. This is probably the height of my participation. So I want to encourage you that if you feel passionate about it, go do it. You'll be surprised how many people will rally to your side, will come to support you. And with that, I want to end this presentation and commend the Morris family and everyone on the Leadership Forum. This is absolutely fantastic. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to leave things better. And we greatly appreciate it. Those of us who will benefit from your leadership, we appreciate it. I offered one job. We're recruiting. We got a bank in Alabama. We got a staff. We got growth in Savannah. We're trying to put an office in Atlanta. So I've been offering jobs left and right. So please come and join us. And those of you who don't have a bank account at Carver State Bank, you're welcome. We'll call us whenever we can be of assistance. And thank you very much.